It started out small, so small I didn't even notice at first. Little things. Things I brushed off without thinking twice. Like how Luna, my dog, used to sleep curled up at the foot of the bed or sometimes in the corner of the room, her breathing soft and steady, a comforting presence but never needy. But one night, without warning, she came up closer. I felt her shift next to the bed, her body pressing against it, her nose nudging at my hand. I figured maybe she just needed a little attention. Maybe she was feeling cold or lonely. So I reached down, gave her a soft pat, mumbled something sleepy, and thought nothing more of it. It felt sweet at first, having her that close. I've always lived alone in this house, tucked away at the edge of town, and the nights get quiet. Sometimes too quiet. So when Luna snuggled up closer than usual, I told myself it was nice. Maybe she sensed the silence too. Maybe she felt the same kind of emptiness I did when the sun went down and the house got still. I thought, well, dogs are smart like that. They can feel things, right? I chalked it up to that. But it didn't stop there. Each night after, she got closer and closer, more insistent, until eventually, she wasn't content with lying beside the bed. She wanted to be right up against me, almost on top of me. One night, I woke to find her pressed so close, I could feel her breath on my face, warm and steady, like she was watching me even as I slept. I laughed it off at first. Figured maybe she was extra clingy, or maybe she sensed something I couldn't. Dogs are supposed to be good at that, sensing moods, knowing when something feels off. I told myself it was nothing more than that. Still, I couldn't ignore the way it felt. The way she wouldn't settle unless she was right beside me, her eyes wide open in the dark, following me as I moved, like she was waiting for something. During the day, she seemed normal enough. She'd still run out into the yard when I opened the back door, sniff around the grass, bark at the occasional squirrel or rabbit darting past. She ate fine, drank fine, curled up in her favorite corner when the sun was out. But at night, it was different. Every evening, like clockwork, as soon as I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, there she was, closer than before, more watchful, more present. At first, I thought maybe she was reacting to me, maybe picking up on my own feelings without me realizing it. I had been feeling a little more isolated lately, not seeing friends much, long stretches of days blending together without much to break them up. Maybe Luna sensed the loneliness that crept in around the edges. Dogs are loyal like that, right? They know when their person needs them. That's what I told myself. It wasn't until a few weeks in that I realized how much her behavior had shifted. It wasn't just the nighttime closeness anymore. During the day, I noticed she started trailing behind me, everywhere I went. Room to room, step by step, always a few feet away, eyes locked on me like she was studying every move I made. I couldn't so much as walk to the kitchen or down the hall without feeling her presence at my back. At first, I found it kind of cute, like having a little shadow. I'd joke out loud, asking her what she was up to, why she needed to be glued to me like that. But there was something about her eyes when she looked at me, something I couldn't quite name. It was more focused, more intense than a dog's gaze should be, almost like she wasn't just looking, but thinking, measuring me somehow. I tried not to let it get to me. I mean, she was still Luna, my sweet dog, my companion, the one who'd been by my side for years without ever causing me an ounce of trouble. She'd always been quiet, gentle, easy to live with. But something about the way she followed me now, the way she stared, lingered a little too long, made me feel like maybe she was seeing more than I wanted her to. It got to a point where I couldn't sit down without her laying at my feet, couldn't stand up without her standing too, couldn't even close the bathroom door without her waiting just outside, listening. I kept brushing it off, telling myself it was harmless, just her being loyal, protective even. Maybe she felt unsettled and needed the reassurance of being near me. But deep down, there was a little voice whispering that something wasn't right. That this was more than a dog's instinct. It wasn't like her. She never used to act this way. Not like this. Not with this kind of intensity. I caught myself watching her out of the corner of my eye more often, noticing how still she'd get when she thought I wasn't looking, how she'd sit and just stare. No blinking, no shifting, like she was waiting for something. Something I couldn't quite understand. There were moments where her eyes didn't seem like a dog's eyes at all. They seemed deeper, darker, holding something heavy. Something that almost made me shiver when I looked too long. But every time I tried to shake it off, she'd go right back to being herself, tail wagging, head tilting when I spoke. It was enough to convince me I was imagining things, overthinking like I sometimes do. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was building, something sitting just under the surface, waiting to reveal itself. And every night, when the lights went out and the house grew quiet, she'd be there, closer than ever. Her body pressed against me, her eyes wide open in the dark. At first, I kept telling myself it was fine, that Luna's behavior was just her being loyal, maybe even protective. I figured she sensed something in me, like how dogs always seem to know when their person is sad or anxious. So when she kept following me from room to room, her eyes tracking my every move, I tried to brush it off. It wasn't unusual for dogs to get attached. That's what everyone always says. But little by little, it started to feel off. Not just loyalty, not just affection. It felt heavier, like there was something sitting underneath the surface that I couldn't quite name. She wasn't wagging her tail when she followed me. She wasn't playful or looking for treats or attention. She was just watching. Always watching. And when I thought I had a minute alone, I'd turn around, and there she was, sitting perfectly still, eyes locked on me like she was trying to figure me out. It got to a point where I felt her gaze before I even saw her. I'd be doing something simple, like brushing my teeth or folding laundry, and I could feel this prickling at the back of my neck, that strange sense that someone was staring. And sure enough, when I'd glance over, Luna would be there, motionless, alert, eyes fixed on me with this deep, unwavering stare. It made me uneasy, but I kept swallowing it down, telling myself I was being ridiculous. Dogs watch their owners, right? They get attached. But still, there was something in her eyes that made it feel like more than that. It wasn't the kind of look you expect from a dog, not curious or playful or happy. It was focused, intense, like she was trying to read me, waiting for something. I even caught myself avoiding her eyes sometimes, like if I looked too long, I might see something I didn't want to. Nights were the worst. At first, Luna had just been sleeping close by, but now it was like she couldn't settle unless she was practically on top of me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and feel her pressed right against my side, her breathing so shallow it barely made a sound. I started to notice she wasn't sleeping like she used to. Instead of curling up and dozing off like a normal dog, she'd lie there stiff, alert, staring at me in the dark, unmoving. Sometimes I'd shift, thinking maybe I'd wake her out of it, but she'd stay completely still, her eyes wide open. There were even nights when I'd half wake in that hazy space between sleep and being fully aware, and I'd find her face inches from mine, no blinking, no breathing sound, just staring. Those nights made my skin crawl, but I never let myself react. I didn't know why. Maybe I thought if I acted normal, things would go back to how they used to be. I told myself I was imagining it, that maybe I was overworked, overtired, and seeing things out of proportion. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. It wasn't just me feeling off. Luna's behavior wasn't the same. It got stranger during the day, too. Little things. She stopped going outside as much. She used to run to the door when I opened it, eager to sniff around or chase after squirrels. But now she hesitated, sticking close to me instead, shadowing me no matter where I went. She barely paid attention to the yard, her eyes always fixed back on me. And when she did step outside, it was only for a moment, like she had to rush back to keep me in sight. I couldn't even move from one room to another without her trailing after me. The more I noticed it, the more it got under my skin. I felt like I couldn't breathe without her staring. What unsettled me the most, though, were the times when she'd stop right in the middle of whatever she was doing and just stand there, like frozen, head tilted slightly, eyes locked on me. No tail wagging, no movement, nothing. Just standing and watching. I'd speak to her, ask her what she was doing, but she wouldn't react, wouldn't move until I did. And every time I turned away, I could feel her eyes still burning into me. There were even moments when I thought I saw something in her expression, something almost aware, like she understood more than she should. I tried to shake it off, telling myself dogs can seem that way sometimes, like they're smart enough to read us. But this felt like more. It wasn't playful curiosity or simple loyalty. It felt measured, like Luna was waiting for me to do something specific, like she had her own thoughts she wasn't sharing. One day, I was cooking in the kitchen, focused on chopping vegetables, when that familiar prickling feeling hit me again. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see her lying by the door or sitting nearby like usual. But instead, she was standing on her hind legs, standing, just watching me. Perfectly balanced, still, eyes sharp and focused like she was trying to understand what I was doing. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. It wasn't a trick I'd taught her. She wasn't begging or playing, she was just standing there, too still, too focused. After a few seconds, she dropped back down to all fours, acting normal like nothing had happened, like it hadn't meant anything at all. But it stuck in my head long after, that image of her standing there, eyes level with mine, unmoving. I didn't tell anyone about it. Who was I going to tell? No one would believe me if I said my dog was acting like something else, something more. I kept it to myself, but every day it seemed like something small kept piling on, something subtle, but hard to ignore. I started feeling anxious in my own house, feeling like there was no space between us anymore. I couldn't shake the sense that Luna wasn't just watching me, but waiting for something I didn't understand. I kept wondering what had changed, why she was acting this way, and why her eyes seemed to hold something deeper than they should. Nights became harder. I found myself staying up later, dreading the moment when I'd have to lie down and feel her press close to me again. I stopped turning off all the lights, leaving one on in the hallway just to keep the dark from swallowing the room completely. But no matter what I did, when I closed my eyes and opened them again, she was always there, always watching, always waiting. And I didn't know how much longer I could pretend I wasn't bothered by it. Something in me knew this wasn't normal, that Luna wasn't the same dog she used to be. And no matter how hard I tried to push those thoughts down, they kept creeping back, louder and harder to ignore. I thought maybe things couldn't get stranger, but I was wrong. It all came to a head one evening, the kind of evening where the sky turns that heavy gray blue before the sun dips completely, and the quiet around the house feels a little too thick, like something is waiting. I'd been restless all day, unable to shake that same gnawing feeling, the one where it felt like Luna's eyes never left me, her gaze following every move I made, sharper than it should have been. I'd kept myself busy, trying to ignore it, cleaning the kitchen, pacing the house, anything to keep my mind from spiraling too far. By the time evening settled in, I was almost convinced I could just push through, that maybe tonight would be normal. But then there was a knock at the door. It wasn't loud, not rushed, but sharp enough to slice right through the quiet. I froze. No one ever came out here unannounced. My place is tucked far enough from the main road that people don't just casually drop by, especially after dark. My heart gave this little jolt, and for a second, I didn't move. Luna, who had been lying by the window, perked up, but not the way she normally would when someone's at the door. She didn't bark. She didn't run to the door. She just sat up slowly, her head tilting slightly, as if she already knew who it was. That alone unsettled me more than the knock itself. I wiped my hands on my jeans, took a breath, and went to open the door, trying to shake the nerves crawling under my skin. Standing on the porch was a man I'd never seen before. Older, maybe late 70s, wearing a faded jacket and a hat pulled low, shadows falling across his face in the dim light. He looked tired, like someone who'd been carrying too much for too long. For a moment, we both stood there in silence, me gripping the edge of the door, him looking at me like he knew something I didn't. Finally, he spoke. His voice was rough, low, but calm. "I don't mean to bother you," he said, "but I think you have my dog." My heart skipped again, and I must have looked at him like he was speaking a different language because he gave this small nod, like he'd been expecting that reaction. "Her name's Luna, right?" he asked, voice softening slightly. White patch on her chest. Dark eyes. I felt the words catch in my throat. How did he know? I glanced back over my shoulder, half expecting Luna to react, but she was sitting perfectly still, just watching from the hallway, ears perked but not alarmed. I turned back to the man, trying to find something to say. "She's been with me for years," I finally managed, my voice a little tighter than I meant. "I got her when she was just a pup." He nodded again, slow, as if he wasn't surprised. Then he shifted, glancing past me toward the inside of the house. "She wasn't always with you," he said quietly. "She came from somewhere else, before you. I've been looking for her." Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. It wasn't the usual story of someone who lost their dog. There was something heavier in his voice. Something careful. Like he was walking a line he wasn't sure he should cross. Against every instinct telling me to keep my distance, I stepped aside and invited him in. Maybe it was the way he looked at me. Maybe it was the fact that deep down, I wanted answers. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just some random visit. He walked inside slowly, like every step was weighed down, his eyes scanning the room, landing briefly on Luna before moving back to me. He didn't seem surprised to see her sitting there, calm and still. In fact, he almost looked sad. After a moment, he spoke again. "Her name wasn't always Luna," he said. "When she was born, well, she wasn't born the way other dogs are." I frowned, unsure of what he meant. He kept talking, voice even but quiet, like he wasn't sure how much to reveal. "She came from a facility, a lab." His eyes flicked back to Luna. "She was part of something they were trying to do, blending things that shouldn't be blended." My chest tightened, and I felt the weight of his words sink in before I fully understood them. I glanced back at Luna, sitting there so still, her eyes fixed on him, not me. He continued, explaining how she was part of some genetic project, an experiment that never should have happened. "They wanted to see how far they could push it," he said. "How human-like they could make something, while still keeping it something else." His voice dropped lower, rougher. "She wasn't supposed to be released, but things got messy. Some of us didn't think it was right. So she ended up out. I didn't know what to say, couldn't even process what he was telling me. Part of me wanted to laugh it off, tell him he was mistaken. But deep down, something cold settled in my gut. It made too much sense. Luna's eyes, her stillness, the way she watched me like she was trying to figure out what I was thinking. The man sighed, pulling off his hat, running a hand through thinning gray hair. I've been trying to find her ever since, he admitted quietly. Not because she's dangerous, but because I knew eventually she'd start changing, more and more, and whoever had her wouldn't understand. I swallowed hard, my eyes flicking back to Luna again. She hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound, just sat there, watching, listening, like she already knew every word. He looked back at me, his eyes tired but serious. I don't think she's hurting you, he said. But you need to understand, she's not just a dog. The longer she's with you, the more you'll see it. My mind reeled, trying to catch up. All the strange moments over the past weeks, her standing on two legs, her unblinking stares, the way she seemed to study me, came flooding back, each one settling heavier now. I asked him why she was created, what they wanted from her, but he just shook his head, said some things aren't meant to be understood. He told me to pay attention, to watch her closely, because the changes wouldn't stop. They'd keep coming. And then, before I could ask more, before I could stop him, he said he had to go. Just like that. No address, no name, no way for me to reach him again. He walked back out into the night like he'd never been there at all, leaving me standing in the doorway, heart pounding, the weight of everything he'd said pressing down on me. I closed the door slowly, turning back toward Luna, who hadn't moved an inch. Her eyes met mine, steady, deep, something flickering there that I didn't want to name. For the first time since I'd had her, I wasn't sure what I was looking at. After the old man left that night, I stood in the middle of my living room, my hands trembling just slightly, my heart pounding in my chest like it had forgotten how to beat steady. I didn't move for a long while. I just stood there, staring at Luna. She was sitting exactly where she'd been the entire time, her dark eyes locked on me, unmoving, unblinking, like she already knew what had been said, like she was waiting to see how I'd react. I couldn't look away. There was something so still about her, so calm, but not in the way a dog should be. It felt more like calculation, like she was quietly weighing me, seeing how much I understood. Everything the man had told me replayed in my head on a loop. The mention of a lab, of experiments, of blending something human with something animal. It sounded crazy, completely impossible. And yet, I couldn't deny how much it made sense. All the strange little things I'd tried to brush off, the way Luna watched me too closely, how she stood upright sometimes, how she never seemed quite like other dogs. They all clicked together now, forming a picture I hadn't been able to see clearly before. I wanted to tell myself it couldn't be true, that he was mistaken or lying or confused, but deep down, there was a cold knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen. Because I knew. I'd known something wasn't right long before he knocked on my door. I just hadn't wanted to face it. I swallowed hard, feeling like the floor beneath me wasn't quite steady anymore. Slowly, I moved toward Luna, kneeling down in front of her. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. Her eyes stayed fixed on mine, steady, dark, too knowing. My breath caught as I studied her face, the tilt of her head, the way she held herself. There was something so eerily composed in her expression, something that felt more human than it had any right to. I reached out, letting my fingers brush lightly against her head. She leaned into the touch like she always did, but there was a weight behind it now, something deeper I couldn't ignore. It felt like she was trying to tell me something without words, something just out of reach. My chest tightened, and I pulled my hand back, trying to swallow the lump forming in my throat. I stood up and backed away slowly, needing space, needing to think. My thoughts spun wildly, trying to make sense of it all. How was I supposed to react? What was I supposed to do now that I knew, or at least suspected, the truth? She wasn't just a dog. She was something else, something caught between. And the more time passed, the clearer it was becoming. I tried to sit on the couch, tried to catch my breath. But every time I glanced at Luna, I felt that same unsettling pull in my chest. I thought back to the little things, the way she used to curl up like any other dog, how over time she started sitting differently, almost too upright, her paws folding in ways that reminded me more of hands, how she would sit by the bed at night, staring at me so still, so intense, like she was trying to figure something out about me, how she'd stand on two legs without wavering, not like a trick, not playful, but as if it was natural. I remembered waking up in the middle of the night to find her inches from my face, just staring, as if she was studying me in my sleep. And now, after hearing everything the man had said, I couldn't stop seeing all those moments in a new, disturbing light. My stomach churned, and I felt like I couldn't trust my own memories anymore. Had she always been like this? Had I been too blind to see it? Or had something been shifting slowly all along, creeping in so gradually that I hadn't realized how far things had gone? I stood up again, pacing back and forth, unable to sit still. I didn't know who I could talk to, who would believe me. What was I even supposed to say? That my dog might not be entirely a dog? That she was created in a lab, part human, part animal? It sounded insane even in my own head. But the proof was sitting right there, calm, quiet, watching my every move. Part of me wanted to run, to get away from the house, from Luna, from the heavy weight pressing down on me. But another part of me couldn't leave. I looked at her again, and despite the knot of fear twisting in my stomach, I felt something else too. Something familiar. Something soft. She was still the same Luna who curled up beside me when the nights got too long, the same one who'd been there through all the empty, lonely moments. I couldn't ignore that. No matter what she was, no matter how much she changed, she had been my constant. My chest ached with the confusion of it all. I didn't know what she was becoming, didn't know how far this transformation might go. And that scared me more than I could admit. But there was also a part of me that couldn't turn away from her, couldn't abandon her. I kept pacing until exhaustion crept in, my body heavy, my thoughts scattered. Finally, I gave up, walked down the hall, and crawled into bed without turning off all the lights. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sound of her breathing as she settled by the bed, the same way she always did. But now, even with my eyes closed, I could feel it. That awareness, that weight of her gaze still on me, patient and steady, like she was waiting for me to catch up. Sleep didn't come easy. My mind kept circling the same questions over and over. What was I supposed to do now that I knew? What would she become? And could I live with it? I didn't have any answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure. Things would never be the same again. No matter how much I wanted to pretend otherwise, I couldn't unsee the truth. I couldn't pretend not to feel the change settling between us like a shadow that wouldn't leave. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but whatever it was, I had to face it. I thought I had reached my limit when it came to surprises, but life always finds a way to dig a little deeper, pull something else out from under you just when you think you've seen it all. A few days passed after the old man's visit, and though I tried to return to some kind of normal routine, nothing really felt normal anymore. Luna's behavior hadn't changed exactly. She still followed me closely, still watched me with that deep, unwavering stare. But now I couldn't look at her without hearing his words echoing in my head. Every little thing she did felt loaded with meaning. I kept wondering how much of her behavior I'd missed before, how long this had really been going on under my nose. And every night, when she curled up near the bed, too close, too still, it felt like something unsaid sat thick between us. It wasn't until one quiet afternoon, when I was doing something as simple as dusting, that I stumbled across something that changed everything. I'd pulled out an old photo album from the shelf, one of those things you keep meaning to sort through, but never do. I flipped it open, the corners of the pictures curling with age, images of me and Luna when she was younger, snapshots of a life that felt far away now. But as I moved to dust off the frame around one particular photo, the frame shifted oddly, like something was wedged behind it. Curious, I set it down, tugging gently at the back, and out slipped an envelope. No return address, no markings, just my name written in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. My breath caught. I knew that handwriting. My hands felt clumsy as I opened it, fingers trembling slightly. Inside was a letter, folded neatly, the paper yellowed at the edges. I unfolded it slowly, my heart pounding in my chest, and there it was, his handwriting, my husband's, the man I'd lost what felt like a lifetime ago. My eyes skimmed the first few lines, and I felt the air leave my lungs. He had written it for me, but for some reason, I'd never seen it until now. Maybe he'd hidden it. Maybe he'd meant for me to find it later. Either way, the words on the page were waiting for me like some quiet truth, tucked away all this time. His words started gently, like he was easing me in, telling me how much he loved me, how sorry he was that he couldn't stay. But as I kept reading, the tone shifted, grew heavier, like he was carrying something he hadn't been able to share while he was alive. And then, there it was. He mentioned Luna. Not just as a pet, not just as the dog we'd raised together, but as something else entirely. My stomach turned as the words spelled it out plainly. He told me that during his final months, after his illness had gotten worse, he'd become involved in a project at a research facility, one he'd never talked about. He explained how Luna hadn't come to us by accident. She was part of something they had been working on, something experimental, something secret. He said she wasn't like other dogs, that her DNA wasn't just canine, but something more, something mixed. He admitted he hadn't known the full extent of it at first, but over time, he began to understand what she really was. He wrote about how, in the end, he couldn't leave her behind, couldn't let her be taken back to that place. So he brought her home, knowing one day she might change in ways I wouldn't expect. He warned me that Luna would likely start showing signs, behaviors that wouldn't make sense, traits that didn't belong to any normal animal. And then, in shaky handwriting near the end, he asked me not to fear her. He asked me to take care of her, to protect her, because whatever she was still part of the life we built together. She was never meant to hurt me, he wrote. She was meant to keep me company, to fill the space he would leave behind. My hands shook as I read the last line over and over, tears blurring the ink until the words smudged on the page. I felt like the ground had dropped out beneath me. Everything made sense now. All the strange moments, all the things I'd tried to explain away. The way Luna seemed to understand more than she should. The way she watched me so closely, stayed by my side like she carried some deeper purpose. It wasn't just instinct. It wasn't coincidence. She had been created, designed, to be something more. And my husband had known. He'd carried that truth alone, tucked it away in this letter, leaving it like a breadcrumb for me to find after he was gone. I sat there for what felt like hours, holding the letter tight, reading and rereading every word, trying to let it all sink in. The sadness felt thick, like I'd lost him all over again. But under it, there was something else. A strange, aching understanding. He hadn't wanted me to be alone. He'd left me Luna because, in some strange way, she was connected to both of us. Part dog, part human, part something unexplainable. I looked up at her then, sitting quietly across the room, her eyes fixed on me in that same steady, knowing way. She didn't move, didn't blink, just waited, like she could feel the shift in me. And for the first time, I didn't look away. I met her gaze head on and felt something in my chest loosen, though the weight of everything I'd just learned still pressed heavy. There was fear, sure. How could there not be? Knowing she wasn't entirely what I thought she was, knowing she might keep changing. But there was something else too. Something quieter. Connection. Recognition. Like I could finally see her fully for what she was, not just my pet, but something left behind by the person I'd loved most. I wiped my eyes, folded the letter carefully, and tucked it away in the drawer by the bed. It felt like a piece of my past had been given back to me, but now I had to figure out how to carry it into whatever came next. Luna stood up then, walked over slowly, and rested her head gently on my knee, looking up at me with those dark, deep eyes. And I reached out, my fingers threading through her fur, not pulling away this time. Whatever she was, whatever she might become, I couldn't push her away. She was all I had left, and maybe, just maybe, she was all I needed. After reading that letter, everything felt different, though I couldn't quite explain how. It was like a door had opened inside me, one I didn't even realize had been locked until now. For days afterward, I kept replaying his words over and over in my head, trying to wrap my mind around what they meant. Not just about Luna, but about him, about me, about the life we had and the life I had now. Knowing the truth about Luna didn't erase the unease I felt, not completely. But at the same time, it shifted something. It was like finally seeing a puzzle you've struggled with for years finally click into place. All those strange things she'd done, watching me so intently, standing on two legs, moving with that eerie stillness. They weren't random anymore. They weren't coincidences. She had been made to be like this, a mix of something human and something canine, something in between. But knowing that didn't scare me in the way I thought it might. Instead, I found myself paying more attention to her, watching her in a different light. I noticed how she seemed to anticipate my moods, how she followed my routines so closely, it felt like she knew them before I did. I saw how her eyes softened when I spoke, how she tilted her head as if she understood every word, not like a dog pretending to listen, but like someone really trying to connect. I couldn't deny that she'd always been there for me, even before I knew who or what she truly was. And after that letter, after learning my husband had left her with me intentionally, as something more than a pet, it was hard not to see her as something more too. At night, when she curled up beside the bed, I no longer felt the same tension in my chest. Instead, I found myself reaching down without thinking, resting my hand gently on her head, feeling the warmth of her fur beneath my fingers. She'd lean into the touch, her eyes lifting to meet mine, and something about the way she looked at me made me feel like we understood each other in a way no one else ever could. There was comfort in it, a strange kind of peace. I began talking to her more, out loud, like she was someone who could actually answer, not expecting anything in return, but because it felt natural. I told her about my day, about little things that crossed my mind, about memories of my husband that would come up at odd times. And she'd sit there, listening. Always listening, her gaze never wavering, her head tilting at the right moments, her body still and steady beside me. It felt like she was really hearing me, really absorbing every word, even if she couldn't speak back. And maybe, in her own way, she was. There were moments, quiet ones, when I'd catch her looking at me in a way that made me wonder if she wanted to say something, but couldn't. Like the words were caught somewhere just out of reach. It should have unnerved me more than it did. But the truth is, the longer we lived like this, just the two of us, the more I started to rely on her, not just as a dog, but as something closer to a partner. She was the one constant presence in my life, the one who never left, never judged, never demanded anything more than my company. And after everything I'd lost, everything I'd tried to bury, that kind of companionship meant more than I could say. I found myself adjusting to the little things that once unsettled me. The way she moved differently, sometimes standing on two legs when she thought I wasn't watching. The way she stared so deeply it felt like she was reading my thoughts. I stopped trying to explain it away or pretend it wasn't happening. I accepted it for what it was. Her nature, shaped by something I couldn't change. It didn't feel wrong anymore. It just felt like her. And somehow, it felt like enough. I also realized that in some strange way, she had been carrying me through my loneliness all along. After my husband died, I thought I'd learned how to live with the silence, how to fill the empty spaces. But I hadn't. I'd just learned how to keep moving, keep existing. It wasn't until Luna's presence filled the house so fully, watching, waiting, always there, that I realized how much I'd been missing real connection, even if it came in a form I didn't expect. One night, not long after I found the letter, I stayed up later than usual, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring at nothing in particular. The house felt still, heavy, but not empty. Luna sat across from me, her eyes following every small movement, as she always did. And without really thinking about it, I looked at her and said, "You're all I have left." The words hung in the air, soft but certain, and she didn't react like a dog might, no wagging tail, no tilt of the head, but instead, she stayed perfectly still, her eyes locked on mine, something deep and steady in her gaze, as if she understood exactly what I meant. I didn't feel the need to fill the silence after that. I just let it sit there between us. It was strange how easily the bond between us settled into something solid after that. Something unspoken, but felt. The days passed and I stopped questioning her little behaviors. I stopped trying to measure what was normal and what wasn't. Instead, I learned to live in that in-between space she existed in, part dog, part something else entirely. She became more than just a pet, more than the strange result of some forgotten experiment. She became a piece of my world I couldn't imagine living without. The unease I'd felt before softened, replaced by something warmer, steadier. Maybe it was acceptance. Maybe it was just love, stretched and reshaped to fit this new reality. Whatever it was, it felt like enough. I didn't know how much she'd continue to change. I didn't know if one day she'd become something so human it would force me to face that uncertainty all over again. But for now, for this moment, I chose to hold on to what we had. A bond forged in silence, in loneliness, in something neither of us could fully explain but both of us needed. And somehow, that felt like exactly what I'd been searching for all along.